Korean MAFIA boss, who didn't know he was a father until she called. On April 24th, 2018, in Jongseon, a foreign woman named Amara Lee gripped her phone with shaking hands, dialing a man who had vanished more than 5 years earlier, leaving behind only silence and a fractured memory. What she did not know was that, when he answered, Baek Ji-sung felt a strange familiarity he could not explain, as if something long buried was forcing its way back to the surface. And the moment he saw the little girl in the hospital bed, he realized it wasn't just the past returning, but a truth his memory had never managed to shield. If this story has already captured your attention, follow the channel, support the video, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The rain falls soft and relentless over Jongseon, each drop whispering against the hospital windows like secrets that refuse to stay buried. Inside room 304 of Hanul Hospital, Amara Lee stands frozen, her fingers gripping the edge of a plastic chair so tightly her knuckles have turned white. The fluorescent lights overhead hum with that particular frequency that makes everything feel sterile, distant, unreal. But this is real. Devastatingly, impossibly real. Her daughter, Hana, lies beneath crisp white sheets, her small chest rising and falling with a rhythm that sounds too fragile, too uncertain. 5 years old. Just 5 years of laughter, of tiny hands reaching for her face in the morning, of questions about why the sky changes colors and whether clouds feel soft when you touch them. 5 years of being everything to Amara. 5 years of being enough. Until today, when enough stopped being enough. Dr. Kang sits across from her, his expression carrying that careful gentleness medical professionals reserve for delivering news that will shatter worlds. He's explained the condition 3 times now, using different words each time, as if changing the language might change the reality. It doesn't. The message remains the same, sharp and unmovable as broken glass. We need to test the biological father, Dr. Kang repeats, his voice softer this time, almost apologetic. Given the genetic markers we've identified, there's a significant possibility he could be compatible. It might be our best option for finding a match. Our best option. Those 3 words echo in Amara's mind like a judge's verdict. She feels the walls of the hospital room closing in, the air becoming thicker, harder to breathe. 6 years. It's been 6 years since she last heard his voice, since she woke up in that small guest house in Jeongup to find him gone. No note, no explanation, just empty space where a person used to be. She'd searched for 3 months, walking the same streets until her feet ached, asking questions in her broken Korean that improved with each desperate inquiry. The woman who owned the guest house remembered him only vaguely. The restaurant where they'd shared bibimbap that last night had different owners. It was as if he'd been erased, carefully removed from existence. Eventually, Amara stopped searching. Not because she stopped caring, but because life demanded forward motion, because she discovered she was pregnant. And that changed everything. Because rage and heartbreak are luxuries single mothers living in foreign countries cannot afford. Now, standing in this hospital room with the rain creating rivers down the windows, she realizes that some disappearances are only temporary. Some ghosts can be summoned back. Her phone feels impossibly heavy in her hand. The number is still there, saved under a name she's never had the courage to delete. She's looked at it perhaps 100 times over the years, her thumb hovering over the call button before reason or pride or protective fear pulls her back. But this isn't about her anymore. Mrs. Lee, Dr. Kang's voice pulls her back. I know this is difficult, but time is a factor we need to consider. Amara nods, not trusting her voice. She looks at Hana, at the IV line running into her small arm, at the monitoring equipment that beeps with mechanical indifference. Her daughter's face is peaceful in sleep, unaware of the storm gathering around her. With trembling fingers, Amara unlocks her phone. The screen's glow feels harsh against her tear-blurred vision. She finds the contact, stares at the name that's haunted her for 6 years. Baek Ji-sung, the man who disappeared without explanation, the man who never knew he left behind more than memories, the man who, in a few seconds, will have his entire world reshaped by a truth he never asked for. She presses call before courage can abandon her. The phone rings once. Her heart hammers against her ribs like it's trying to escape. Twice. She can hear the rain intensifying outside, as if nature itself is holding its breath. 3 times. Maybe he changed his number. Maybe this is a sign that some doors should stay closed. 4 rings, and then, "Yoboseo?" The voice hits her like a physical force. It's him. Older, perhaps, with a caution that wasn't there before, but unmistakably him. The same voice that once whispered promises in the darkness, that laughed at her attempts to pronounce Korean food names correctly, that told her she was beautiful in 2 languages. For a moment, Amara can't speak. 6 years of imagined conversations, of practiced speeches, of carefully constructed anger. All of it evaporates, leaving only raw, unfiltered panic. "Who's calling?" he asks again, this time in English, surprising her. His tone carries something she doesn't expect, confusion mixed with something else, almost like recognition struggling through fog. "It's..." Amara's voice cracks. She clears her throat, forcing strength she doesn't feel. "It's Amara Lee, from Jung-up." Silence stretches between them, heavy and loaded. She can hear his breathing change, becoming faster, shallower. I'm sorry. I don't..." He stops. Something in his voice shifts, like a door opening in a dark room. That name. Why does that sound familiar? Amara's blood runs cold. "You don't remember me?" There's genuine distress in his voice now. "Something happened. I lost time. Months of it. The doctors said it might come back, but..." He trails off, and she can hear the frustration, the confusion. "Please, tell me why you're calling. Why does your voice make me feel like I'm forgetting something important?" Tears stream down Amara's face, hot and unstoppable. This isn't how she imagined this moment. In her mind, he'd always been the villain of their story, the man who chose to leave. But this is something else entirely. Something darker and more complicated. "I need you to come to Hanul Hospital in Jongseon," she says, her voice steadier than she feels. "There's a child here, a little girl. She's sick, and she needs help." "A child?" His voice rises with alarm. "What child? I don't understand." "Your daughter," Amara says, and the words feel like stepping off a cliff. "Her name is Hana. She's 5 years old and she has your eyes. And right now, she's depending on you being exactly who I remember you were before you disappeared." The silence that follows is so profound she can hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely a whisper. "My daughter?" "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. When he speaks again, there's something in his voice that makes Amara's skin prickle with unease. "I'll come," he says quietly. "Give me the address. I'll be there as soon as I can." She provides the information mechanically, her mind already racing ahead to what happens next, to the questions he'll ask, to the answers she'll have to give, to the moment when he sees Hana and realizes that sometimes disappearing doesn't mean escaping. "Amara," he says just before she hangs up, his voice carrying a tremor she doesn't understand. "Whatever happened between us? Why do I feel like I should apologize for something I can't remember doing?" She closes her eyes, fresh tears cutting paths down her cheeks. Because sometimes the worst things we do are the ones we don't even know we're doing. After she ends the call, Amara stands in the quiet hospital room, listening to Hana's soft breathing, to the rain against the windows, to the sound of her own world fundamentally changing shape. She doesn't know yet that Baek Ji-sung's memory loss wasn't random, that his disappearance wasn't voluntary, that the truth waiting to unfold will be far more devastating than simple abandonment. All she knows is that she's opened a door that's been sealed for 6 years, and whatever walks through it will change everything. In her sleep, Hana shifts slightly, her small hand reaching out as if searching for something. Amara takes it gently, holding on as if love alone could protect them from what's coming. Outside, the rain continues to fall over Jongseon, washing the streets clean, erasing footprints, making it impossible to tell where anyone has been or where they're going next. The drive from Seoul to Jongseon takes 3 hours, but for Baek Ji-sung, every minute feels like falling through broken memories that refuse to form complete pictures. His hands grip the steering wheel of his black Genesis GV80 with unnecessary force, knuckles white against the leather, as rain continues its relentless assault on the windshield. Amara Lee. The name circles through his mind like a prayer he's forgotten how to finish. Each syllable feels familiar in his mouth, heavy with meaning he can't quite grasp. It's like trying to hold water in his hands. The harder he concentrates, the more the memory slips through his fingers. The doctors had called it retrograde amnesia. Specific and selective, they'd said, as if that made it better. As if knowing the medical terms somehow filled the gaping holes in his memory. 4 months of his life simply gone, erased, replaced with fog and fragments that never quite connect into coherent images. His family, his mother, with her tight-lipped silences, his brother Juno with those careful, measuring eyes. They'd told him not to dig. "You were ill," his mother had said, her voice carrying that particular tone that discouraged questions. "You needed rest. That's all that matters now." But it wasn't all that mattered. Not when he woke up sometimes with the phantom sensation of someone's hand in his, warm and small and trusting. Not when certain songs on the radio made his chest ache for reasons he couldn't explain. Not when he'd catch himself looking at his phone, feeling like he should be calling someone whose name lived just beyond the edge of memory. Now, driving through the rain-slicked streets toward Jongseon, Baek Ji-sung grips the steering wheel of his black Genesis sedan with white-knuckled intensity. The highway stretches before him, slick and dark, reflecting the glow of streetlights like scattered stars. It's past midnight, but sleep is impossible. Sleep has been impossible since he answered that phone call 3 hours ago. Your daughter. The words loop in his mind. Relentless and impossible. He has a daughter. A 5-year-old daughter he never knew existed. A child who shares his blood, his genes, possibly his smile or his laugh or the way his fingers curve when he's thinking. A daughter he can't remember. The gaps in his memory are like missing teeth. You learn to work around them, but your tongue never stops finding the empty spaces. 18 months of his life, simply gone. The doctors at Seoul National University Hospital had called it dissociative amnesia, likely triggered by trauma. His family had called it a difficult period, and refused to discuss it further, their silence more telling than any explanation. He'd been found in Jeongup, disoriented and injured, with no memory of how he got there or what had happened. The police report said he'd been discovered near the old Gumsansa temple, confused and incoherent. No signs of immediate harm, just emptiness where memories should have been. Now, driving through the rain toward Jongseon, Jisung's hands grip the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles ache. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm against the downpour, but they can't clear away the fog in his mind. Amara Lee. The name echoes through him like a bell ringing in an empty room. He doesn't remember her face, can't recall her voice beyond what he just heard on the phone, but something about her presence, even through a phone line, feels like touching a scar he didn't know he had. And a daughter. He has a daughter. The thought makes him grip the steering wheel tighter as he navigates the wet roads toward Jongseon. His hands are shaking. He can't remember the last time his hands shook like this. Jisung glances at his reflection in the rearview mirror at a red light. Dark circles under his eyes that have become permanent fixtures. The small scar above his left eyebrow that he has no memory of getting. At 32 years old, he should know his own story, but there's a hole in his history. 6 months that exist only as blank space and other people's careful explanations. The doctors had called it dissociative amnesia, triggered by psychological trauma. His family had called it an unfortunate incident we don't discuss. The psychiatrist had called it the mind's way of protecting itself from something it couldn't process. Jisung just calls it theft. Someone stole 6 months of his life, and with it, apparently, a woman named Amara, and a daughter he never knew existed. His hands grip the steering wheel of his Genesis G80 as he navigates the mountain roads toward Jongseon. The rain has intensified, turning the world outside into a blur of gray and green. His mind races faster than the windshield wipers can clear the glass. A daughter. He has a daughter. The words feel foreign, impossible, like trying to hold water in his hands. He searched through the fragments of his lost months countless times, trying to piece together what happened during those missing weeks in Jeongup. His family, particularly his brother Juno, had been frustratingly vague, insisting he'd simply needed time away, and that the details weren't important. The doctors attributed his memory loss to trauma from a fall, but could never quite explain the inconsistencies in that story. Now, driving through the rain-soaked roads toward Jongseon, Jisung grips the steering wheel of his Genesis GV80 so tightly his fingers ache. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm, but they can't clear away the fog in his mind. A daughter. He has a daughter. The words feel foreign, Impossible, like trying to hold water in cupped hands. The woman's voice on the phone, Amara, had stirred something deep in his chest, something that felt like recognition wrapped in static, like trying to remember a dream upon waking, knowing something important happened, but unable to grasp the details. Ji-sung glances at his reflection in the rearview mirror as he drives through the rain-slicked streets toward Jongseon. His hands grip the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white. The face looking back at him is familiar, yet strange, like seeing a photograph of someone you used to know intimately, but can no longer quite place. The lost months haunt him constantly. September through December of 2019, erased like chalk from a blackboard. His family tells him he had an accident, that he was found confused and disoriented in Jeongup, that it's better not to dwell on what can't be remembered. His brother Juno especially becomes tense whenever he asks questions, changing the subject with practiced ease. But this phone call, this woman's voice, it stirred something deep and untouchable, like touching a bruise he didn't know he had. The highway to Jongseon stretches before him, gray and slick with rain. Ji-sung grips the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his knuckles white against the black leather. His mind races faster than the car, trying to grasp at memories that slip away like smoke between fingers. A child, his daughter, 5 years old. The mathematics are simple, brutal. 6 years ago, he lost 4 months of his life. 4 months that exist only as a blank space in his mind, a void that doctors said might never fill in completely. His family had found him disoriented, confused, with injuries they explained away as an accident. He'd accepted their version because what choice did he have? Memory is a story we tell ourselves, and when the pages are torn out, we have to trust others to fill in the blanks. But now, driving through the rain-soaked roads toward Jongseon, Ji-sung feels something stirring in the depths of his mind. Not quite memory, but something close to it. A feeling, a sense of wrongness about the story he's been told. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm against the October rain, and with each sweep, fragments surface. A laugh, warm brown eyes, the taste of makgeolli shared on a cool evening, a foreign accent wrapping around Korean words with charming imprecision. Amara. He repeats the name silently, testing it against the blankness in his memory. Something resonates, like a bell ringing in a distant room, but when he tries to reach for it, the memory dissolves like smoke. The highway from Seoul to Jongseon stretches ahead, headlights from other cars cutting through the evening darkness. Ji-sung's hands grip the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his knuckles showing white even in the dim interior light. He's made this drive countless times for business, but tonight, every kilometer feels loaded with significance he doesn't understand. A daughter. He has a daughter. The words repeat in his mind like a mantra, like a foreign language he's trying to learn. 5 years old, named Hana. His eyes, the woman said. That woman, Amara, whose voice stirred something in him that felt simultaneously like recognition and drowning. The highway stretches before him, illuminated by streetlights that create pools of amber in the darkness. Rain continues to fall, lighter now but persistent, and his windshield wipers maintain a steady rhythm that does nothing to calm his racing thoughts. Ji-sung's hands grip the steering wheel tightly as fragments of that lost time flicker at the edges of his memory, like moths drawn to flame. Jeongup. He knows he was there. The medical records confirm it. The police report filed by his brother confirms it. But everything about those months exists behind a wall of fog that refuses to lift completely. He remembers waking up in a private hospital in Seoul, his brother Juno sitting beside the bed with an expression that mixed relief with something else. Something that looked almost like guilt, though Ji-sung told himself he was imagining it. The doctors spoke of trauma, of temporary amnesia, of the brain's protective mechanisms, when faced with experiences too difficult to process. You fell, Juno had explained, his voice carefully controlled, during a business trip to Jeongup. Hit your head badly. We found you 3 days later, confused and disoriented. You're lucky to be alive. Lucky. The word tastes bitter now. Because if he was so lucky, why does the word Jeongup make his chest tighten? Why do certain scents, jasmine, rain on warm pavement, the particular smell of cheap coffee, trigger emotions he can't name? Why does he sometimes wake from dreams he can't remember with tears on his face? And why, when Amara said her name, did something inside him crack open like a door that had been locked from the inside? His phone rests in the cup holder, the hospital address glowing on the navigation screen. Hanul Hospital, Jongsan. 2 hours from Seoul. 2 hours to prepare himself for meeting a child he didn't know existed. 2 hours to figure out how to explain a disappearance he can't remember. Ji-sung tries to imagine it, a little girl with his eyes, and finds the concept simultaneously terrifying and oddly right, like a puzzle piece he didn't know was missing suddenly appearing. The rain intensifies again as he passes through a small town, its streets mostly empty at this hour. A convenience store glows like a beacon, and he considers stopping, buying something, flowers maybe, or a toy. But what do you bring to a meeting like this? What gift bridges 6 years of absence? His brother's voice echoes in his memory from a conversation 3 months ago, when Ji-sung had pressed harder than usual about the missing time. Some memories are better left buried, Juno had said, his expression unreadable. Trust me on this. You recovered. You built a life. Why dig up a past that only brought you pain? At the time, Ji-sung had accepted this. Now, driving through the rain toward a hospital where his daughter lies sick, he wonders what else has been buried, what other pieces of himself are missing. The navigation announces he's 30 minutes away. Ji-sung's heart rate accelerates. 30 minutes until he meets Hana. 30 minutes until he sees Amara again, and hopefully understands why her voice makes him feel like he's remembering how to breathe, after holding his breath for years. He thinks about the question she asked before hanging up. Why do you feel like you should apologize for something you can't remember doing? Because somewhere deep inside, beneath the fog and the carefully constructed explanations, Ji-sung knows something is wrong. Has always known. The way his family became more protective after his recovery. The way certain questions were deflected. The way his mother's eyes sometimes filled with tears when she thought he wasn't looking. The way he sometimes catches himself reaching for a phone to call someone whose name he can't remember. As the hospital comes into view, a modern building standing against the dark sky like a lighthouse, Ji-sung takes a deep breath. Whatever truth waits inside those walls, whatever connection he had with Amara that his mind has locked away, whatever reason his daughter is lying in a hospital bed needing him, he's about to face it all. He parks in the visitor's lot, cuts the engine, and sits in sudden silence. The rain drums on the roof, 1,000 tiny heartbeats. Okay, he whispers to himself, to the ghost of whoever he used to be, to the child waiting inside who shares his blood. Let's find out what I forgot. He steps out into the rain, and with each step toward the hospital entrance, he feels like he's walking toward a mirror that's been covered for 6 years, about to reveal a reflection he might not recognize. The automatic doors slide open, welcoming him into a world where nothing will ever be the same again. The fluorescent lights of Hanul Hospital cast everything in shades of clinical white and pale blue, making the world feel simultaneously too bright and not bright enough. Ji-sung stands in the doorway of room 304, his body frozen in that peculiar paralysis that comes when reality exceeds imagination's capacity to prepare you. She's so small. That's his first thought. His daughter, and the word still feels foreign on his tongue, like speaking a language he's only just learned, is impossibly small against the hospital bed. The white sheets seem to swallow her tiny frame, making her look even more fragile than she probably is. An IV line runs into her arm, taped down with colorful bandages decorated with cartoon characters he doesn't recognize. Medical equipment surrounds her like silent sentinels, their screens displaying numbers and graphs that mean nothing to him, but everything to the doctors monitoring her condition. Hana. Her name is Hana, which means one in Korean, or flower, depending on the character. He wonders which meaning Amara chose, wonders if he was there when the name was decided, wonders how many other crucial moments of this child's life have happened in the blank space where his memories should be. But it's her face that stops his breath completely. She has his eyes, not just the same color or shape, though those are unmistakably his, but the exact expression he sees in his own mirror when he's deep in thought. That slight crease between the eyebrows, the way her lashes cast shadows on her cheeks. Her hair is darker than his, curling slightly at the ends where it spreads across the pillow. Her lips are parted slightly in sleep, and he can see the gap between her 2 front teeth that makes her look even younger than 5 years old. This is his daughter. This impossibly small person carries half of his DNA, half of his genetic code, half of everything that makes him who he is. The thought is overwhelming in its enormity. She's been sleeping more since this morning. Amara's voice comes from the chair beside the bed. quiet and carefully controlled. The doctors say that's normal with her condition, that her body needs the rest. Ji-sung finally tears his gaze away from Hana to look at the woman he can't remember. Amara sits with her back straight, her hands folded in her lap with a precision that speaks of someone holding themselves together through sheer force of will. She's beautiful in an understated way. Warm brown skin, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, eyes that carry the particular exhaustion that comes from loving someone who's suffering and being powerless to stop it. She's also looking at him like he's a ghost, which he supposes he is. "You look different," Amara says softly, her accent coloring the words with a melody that feels achingly familiar despite his lack of memory. "Older, more tired." "So do you," Ji-sung replies, then immediately wants to take it back. It sounds like criticism when he means it as observation, as connection, as acknowledgement that time has passed and left its marks on both of them. But Amara just nods, accepting this truth. 6 years of single parenting in a foreign country will do that. The words land like stones in water, creating ripples that spread wider than their surface impact. 6 years. 6 years of birthdays he missed, of first words he didn't hear, of scraped knees he didn't bandage, of bedtime stories he didn't read. 6 years of this woman raising their daughter alone, building a life around an absence she couldn't explain because he couldn't explain it either. "I'm sorry," Ji-sung says, the words feeling massively inadequate. "I know that doesn't mean anything, or doesn't mean enough, but I am. I'm sorry. Are you?" There's no accusation in Amara's voice, just genuine curiosity. "Because you don't remember, right? How can you be sorry for something you don't remember doing?" It's a fair question. Ji-sung takes a step into the room, his eyes drawn back to Hana. "Because she exists. Because you exist. Because somewhere in the part of my memory that's gone, I made choices that led to this moment, and those choices hurt you. Whether I remember them or not doesn't change the consequences." Amara studies him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she gestures to the empty chair on the other side of Hana's bed. "Sit. We need to talk, and the doctor will be here soon." Ji-sung sits, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him like a physical thing. From this angle, he can see both Amara and Hana, can watch the way Amara's eyes never stray far from their daughter, the protective vigilance that never completely rests. "Tell me," Amara says quietly. "Tell me what you remember about Jungkook, about that time." Ji-sung takes a breath, organizing thoughts that refuse to organize themselves. "Nothing. I remember arriving for what was supposed to be a business consultation with a local development project. I remember checking into a hotel. And then," he spreads his hands helplessly, "then I'm waking up in a hospital in Seoul 18 days later, with my brother sitting beside my bed, and doctors telling me I'd had an accident." 18 days? Amara's voice sharpens. "You were there for almost 4 months. The number hits Ji-sung like a physical blow. 4 months, not 18 days. 4 entire months of his life, simply gone. "That's impossible," he says. But even as the words leave his mouth, he knows they're not. His family lied to him. His brother lied to him. The carefully constructed narrative of his accident and brief hospitalization collapses like a house of cards. "I have pictures," Amara says, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. "From our time together. Maybe they'll help." She swipes through her gallery, then turns the screen toward him. The image shows a version of himself he barely recognizes. Younger, looser, smiling with unguarded joy. He's standing outside what looks like a traditional Korean restaurant, his arm around Amara, both of them laughing at something beyond the camera's frame. He's wearing clothes he doesn't own anymore, a hairstyle he doesn't remember having, but it's his eyes that catch him. In the photo, his eyes are alive in a way they haven't been since he can remember, like someone turned on a light inside him that has since been switched off. "We met at a Hanok village," Amara says, her voice distant with memory. "You were there for work. I was there photographing traditional architecture for a project. We literally bumped into each other. I mean physically collided, and you helped me pick up all my camera equipment. You kept apologizing in English even though your English was perfect." A ghost of a smile touches her lips. "You asked if you could buy me coffee to make up for the collision. I said yes. That was May 15th. Ji-sung stares at the photo, willing himself to remember. Nothing comes. Just that same maddening fog that's haunted him for 6 years. "We spent every day together after that," Amara continues, swiping to another photo. This one shows them at what looks like a mountain temple, her head resting on his shoulder. You said you'd never felt this way before, that you'd spent your whole life following your family's expectations, and being with me felt like finally breathing. You talked about leaving Seoul, starting over somewhere new. Each word is a knife, cutting away at the story Ji-sung thought he knew about himself. What happened? He asks, his voice barely a whisper. Why did I leave? I don't know. Amara's composure finally cracks, tears sliding down her cheeks. One morning, I woke up and you were gone. Your things, your phone, everything. I searched for weeks. Your hotel said you'd checked out unexpectedly. The business contacts you'd mentioned didn't exist. It was like you were never there. Ji-sung feels something cold settle in his chest. His family. The pieces are connecting in ways that make him sick. A soft knock interrupts them. Dr. Kang enters, followed by a nurse pushing a cart with medical supplies. Mr. Beck, the doctor greets him with a professional smile. Thank you for coming so quickly. We need to run some preliminary tests to see if you're compatible as a donor. As the nurse begins preparing him for blood work, Ji-sung watches Hana sleep. This child, his daughter, is fighting something inside her body that he doesn't understand. Something that requires pieces of him he didn't know he could give. The nurse ties the tourniquet around his arm, tapping for a vein. Ji-sung barely feels it. His mind is elsewhere, in a hotel room 6 years ago, trying to understand what happened in those missing months. Trying to understand why his family would lie about something so fundamental. Mr. Beck? Dr. Kang's voice pulls him back. The preliminary blood type is a match. That's very good news. We'll need to run more detailed compatibility tests, but this is extremely promising. Amara's shoulders sag with relief, so profound it's almost visible. Thank you, she whispers, though Ji-sung isn't sure if she's speaking to him or to God or to the universe in general. As the medical team works, Ji-sung makes a decision. Whatever happened 6 years ago, whatever his family is hiding, whatever truth is buried in those missing months, he's going to find it. Not just for himself, but for the sleeping child in the hospital bed who carries his blood and deserves to know her father's full story. Hana stirs slightly, her small hand reaching out in sleep as if searching for something. Without thinking, Ji-sung reaches across the bed and gently takes her hand in his. Her fingers are impossibly small, warm and trusting even in unconsciousness. Something shifts inside his chest, a feeling he has no name for. Protection, maybe, or recognition. Or the beginning of love that has nothing to do with memory and everything to do with blood. Recognizing blood. I'm here, he whispers to her, to himself, to the ghost of whoever he used to be. I'm here now, and I'm not disappearing again. Outside the hospital window, the rain has stopped, leaving the world washed clean and shimmering. Somewhere in Seoul, his family is going about their evening, unaware that the careful lies they've constructed are about to crumble, because Ji-sung isn't going to let this go. Not anymore. The Bayek family estate sits in Namwon like a monument to old money and older secrets. Traditional Hanok architecture blends with modern security systems, creating a space that feels simultaneously timeless and impenetrable. Ji-sung parks his car outside the main gate, his hands gripping the steering wheel for several long moments before he can bring himself to move. Beside him, Amara sits in tense silence. She'd insisted on coming despite his protests. Her jaw set with a determination he's beginning to recognize as fundamental to who she is. She's my daughter, Amara had said simply. Whatever your family knows, I have a right to hear it. She was right, of course. But that doesn't make this easier. The gate opens automatically. They're expected, which means Juno received his call and chose not to avoid this conversation. That alone tells Ji-sung something is wrong. His brother never faces conflict directly, unless he has no other choice. They walk through the courtyard where koi swim in lazy circles beneath lily pads, oblivious to the tension crackling in the autumn air. The main house looms before them, its curved roof tiles gleaming in the late afternoon sun. Ji-sung has walked this path 1,000 times, but today it feels like approaching a stranger's home. The door opens before they can knock. His mother, Park Mi-young, stands in the entrance, her posture perfect as always, her expression carefully neutral. But Ji-sung knows her well enough to see the fear in the corners of her eyes, the way her hands clasp together just a bit too tightly. Ji-sung, she says softly. Then her gaze shifts to Amara. Something flickers across her face. Recognition? Guilt? It's gone too quickly to identify. Please, come in. The interior of the house is exactly as Ji-sung remembers. Minimalist furniture, priceless pottery displayed in lit alcoves, the faint scent of sandalwood incense. Everything in its place, everything controlled and curated. A museum of a family rather than a home. Juno waits in the main sitting room, standing by the window with his back to them. He's always been good at dramatic positioning, at using space and silence to establish dominance. At 35, he's 3 years older than Ji-sung, and has spent every one of those years being groomed to take over the family's construction business. Perfect posture, perfect suits, perfect life, built on perfect lies. "Brother," Juno says without turning, "I was wondering when you'd come. Then you know why I'm here." Ji-sung's voice is harder than he intends, but he doesn't soften it. "I can guess." Juno finally turns, and Ji-sung is struck by how tired his brother looks. There are lines around his eyes that weren't there 6 years ago, a weight in his shoulders that speaks of burdens carried in silence. "But perhaps introductions first? Mother hasn't met your companion." "Her name is Amara Lee," Ji-sung says, moving to stand beside her in a gesture of solidarity. "And she's not my companion. She's the mother of my daughter, a daughter you apparently knew existed while letting me believe I had no children." The words hang in the air like smoke. Mi-young's hand flies to her mouth, though the gesture seems performative rather than surprised. She knew. Of course she knew. "Sit," Juno says, gesturing to the low table surrounded by cushions. "This conversation requires context." "It requires truth," Amara says, speaking for the first time. Her voice is steady, but Ji-sung can see her hands trembling slightly. 6 years of truth that you kept from both of us." They sit, the 4 of them arranged around the table like opponents in a negotiation rather than family. A tea service sits ready. Someone, probably one of the household staff, prepared for this confrontation. Mi-young pours with practiced grace, but her hands shake just enough to make the porcelain rattle softly. "Tell me about Jungkook," Ji-sung says, refusing the offered tea. "Tell me what really happened during those months you said I was only gone for 18 days. Juno and Mi-young exchange a look, one of those silent conversations that decades of proximity make possible. Finally, Juno sighs, and for a moment, he looks less like the polished businessman, and more like the brother Ji-sung remembers from childhood. Uncertain, almost vulnerable. "You went to Jungkook for a land development consultation," Juno begins, his voice carefully controlled. "A routine business trip. But you called me after 2 weeks saying you were extending your stay. Something about needing time to think, to clear your head. You sounded different, lighter, almost happy in a way I hadn't heard since we were children." Amara's breath catches beside him. Ji-sung reaches for her hand without thinking, their fingers intertwining like it's the most natural thing in the world. "We didn't think much of it at first," Mi-young continues, her voice soft. "You were under so much pressure with the business, with the engagement to the Min family daughter that you'd been resisting. We thought maybe some distance was good for you." "Engagement?" Amara's voice cuts through the room like a blade. "You were engaged?" Ji-sung turns to her, seeing betrayal flood her eyes. I don't remember. I swear to you, I don't remember. It was arranged," Juno says, and there's something almost apologetic in his tone. "By our father before he passed. A merger of families, of business interests. You hated it, fought against it for years, but you'd finally agreed to go through with it for the family's sake. The pieces are starting to form a picture Ji-sung doesn't want to see. So when you found out about Amara, we panicked." Mi-young's voice breaks. "You called us after 3 months, said you'd fallen in love, that you were going to end the engagement, that you'd found someone who made you want to be a different person. You sounded so certain, so happy." Tears streak down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "Your father would have been so disappointed. The Min family would have destroyed us financially. Everything we'd built, everything we'd worked for. So you what?" Ji-sung's voice rises despite his efforts to control it. "You made me disappear?" "No." Juno stands abruptly, pacing to the window. "It wasn't like that. We came to talk to you, to reason with you. Mother, myself, and 2 family associates. We found you at the guest house where you were staying. You were packing, talking about how you and Amara were going to move somewhere together. Start fresh." He pauses, his back still to them. When he continues, his voice is barely above a whisper. "There was an argument. You were determined to leave, to throw away everything for this new life. I said things. Things about duty, about responsibility, about how you were being selfish. Juno's shoulders tense. You tried to leave anyway, to go to her. There was a struggle at the top of the stairs. The silence that follows is suffocating. Ji-sung can hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. You fell, Mi-young says, her voice hollow, down a full flight of stairs. Hit your head on the corner of a table at the bottom. There was so much blood. For a moment we thought you were gone. Amara's hand tightens around Ji-sung's, her nails digging into his palm. We took you to a private hospital, Juno continues, still not turning around. The doctor said you had a severe concussion, possible brain trauma. You were unconscious for 3 days. When you woke up, you didn't remember anything from the previous months. Not Jung-yup, not the business trip, not... He finally turns, his eyes meeting Ji-sung's. Not her. And you let me believe the lie, Ji-sung says, his voice dangerously quiet. You let me think it was just 18 days, just a simple accident. What were we supposed to do? Mi-young's voice rises with desperate defense. You had no memory of her. No memory of planning to leave. The doctors said forcing memories could be harmful, that your mind had protected itself from trauma. We thought it was better this way. Cleaner. Safer. Safer for whom? Amara's voice is ice. Not for me. Not for your granddaughter. The word granddaughter hits Mi-young like a physical blow. We didn't know about the child. We checked the area afterward, made sure you hadn't left any loose ends. But there was no trace of pregnancy. No indication. Because I didn't know yet. Amara's voice breaks. I found out 2 weeks after Ji-sung vanished. 2 weeks of searching for him. Of trying to understand why the man who said he loved me had disappeared without a word. And then I discovered I was carrying his child, and I was alone in a foreign country with no way to find him. No way to tell him. Ji-sung feels something crack inside his chest. 6 years. 6 years of lies built on a moment of violence they disguised as accident. 6 years of Amara raising their daughter alone. 6 years of Hana growing up without a father, because his family chose reputation over truth. The medical records, he says slowly, pieces clicking into place. You falsified them. Made it seem like I was only hospitalized briefly. Juno nods. We had connections. Money opens doors. Silence buys loyalty. The official story became that you'd had a minor accident. Nothing serious. The engagement to the Min family proceeded as planned, though you eventually broke it off a year later for personal reasons once you were fully recovered. And you never thought to tell me the truth. Ji-sung stands, needing to move, needing to escape the suffocating weight of their confession. Never thought that maybe I had a right to know I'd had an entire life you erased. We were protecting you. Mi-young rises too, her voice desperate. And protecting the family. If word had gotten out about what happened, the scandal, the legal implications. Legal implications? Amara stands and there's steel in her voice now. You mean the fact that your actions directly caused his injury? That you essentially held him against his will? That you let me believe he'd abandoned me when really you'd stolen him? The accusations hang in the air. Undeniable. Juno's face has gone pale. Mi-young's carefully constructed composure completely shattered. I need to go, Ji-sung says, his voice hollow. He looks at his mother, at his brother, and sees strangers wearing familiar faces. I need to process this, and I need to be with my daughter. As they move toward the door, Juno's voice stops them. Ji-sung, I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know sorry can't undo 6 years. But I am. Every day since. I've lived with what we did. What I did. Ji-sung turns, studying his brother's face. The guilt is real. He can see that. But real guilt doesn't erase real consequences. You should have told me the moment I woke up, Ji-sung says quietly. Instead, you built a prison out of lies and called it protection. You didn't just steal my memories. You stole my choice, my life, my daughter's first 5 years. He takes Amara's hand again, feeling her fingers trembling in his. And now Hana is in a hospital bed fighting for her life. And if your lies had kept me away one more day, one more week. He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. They leave the Baek estate in silence, the gate closing behind them with a finality that feels like burning bridges. As Ji-sung starts the car, Amara finally speaks. What are we going to tell Hana when she's old enough to ask? Ji-sung looks at the house in his rearview mirror, at the place that was supposed to be home, but now feels like a mausoleum of secrets. The truth, he says simply. Whatever else happens, we tell her the truth. She deserves that much. As they drive back toward Jongseon, toward the hospital where their daughter waits, neither of them notices the car that begins following them 3 blocks from the Bayek estate. Neither sees the way it maintains a careful distance, professional and patient. Some truths, once uncovered, have their own gravity, and the Baek family's secrets are far from fully revealed. The old guest house in Jonggeop looks smaller than Ji-sung imagined, though he supposes everything looks smaller when filtered through the lens of lost time and recovered truth. The building sits at the end of a quiet street lined with persimmon trees, their branches heavy with fruit that glows orange in the afternoon light. Paint peels from the wooden window frames, and the sign out front, Hanok Stay Guest House, has faded to barely readable characters. He stands across the street, his hands in his pockets, trying to feel something. Recognition, memory, anything. But there's only that same maddening blankness, like staring at a photograph of someone who's supposed to be you, but looks like a stranger. Are you sure about this? Amara asks beside him. She's been quiet since they left Namwon, processing the revelations from his family. Hana is stable enough that they could take this detour, though both of them carry their phones with the ringer volume turned to maximum, waiting for any call from the hospital. No, Ji-sung admits, but I need to try, if there's any chance that being here might trigger something. He doesn't finish the sentence. They both know how desperate it sounds, but desperation is all they have right now. That, and the growing certainty that the truth his family told them is still incomplete. They cross the street together. The guest house door opens with a familiar creak that Ji-sung doesn't consciously remember, but that his body seems to recognize. His shoulders tense, his breathing quickens slightly. Muscle memory, maybe, or just anxiety. An elderly woman emerges from the back room, her hair steel gray, her face mapped with wrinkles that speak of decades spent smiling. She looks at Ji-sung, and something flickers across her expression. Surprise, recognition, and something that might be pity. You, she says simply, in Korean. You came back. Ji-sung's heart hammers. You remember me? Of course I remember you. The woman, Mrs. Choi, according to the name tag pinned to her cardigan, comes closer, studying his face. You stayed here for almost 4 months. Longest guest I've ever had. And then one day you were gone, and those men in expensive suits told me to forget you were ever here. Amara translates quickly, her Korean having improved dramatically over 6 years of necessity. Ji-sung feels his chest tighten. Can you tell me about that time? He asks. Anything you remember? Mrs. Choi's expression softens. Come, sit. This is not a conversation for standing. She leads them to a small common room with floor cushions arranged around a low table. The space smells of aged wood and green tea. Mrs. Choi disappears briefly, returning with a photo album bound in faded fabric. I keep pictures of long-term guests, she explains, opening the album to a marked page. For memories, for proof that this old place once hosted lives being lived. The photograph steals Ji-sung's breath. It's him, undeniably him, but transformed. He's sitting on the guest house porch with a laptop, wearing a casual t-shirt and jeans Ji-sung doesn't recognize owning. His hair is longer, unstyled, falling across his forehead, but it's his expression that's most striking. He looks peaceful, content, like someone who'd found something he'd been searching for his entire life without knowing he was searching. You were different then, Mrs. Choi says quietly. When you first arrived, you were tense, all business. But as weeks passed, you softened, especially after you met her. She gestures to Amara. You'd leave in the morning and come back at night glowing. I've run this guest house for 40 years. I know what love looks like. Amara's hand finds Ji-sung's under the table, squeezing tightly. That last week, though, Mrs. Choi continues, her voice dropping. Something changed. You received phone calls that made you angry, worried. You'd pace in your room for hours. I could hear you through the walls, talking to yourself, trying to make decisions. Do you know what he was deciding? Amara asks. Mrs. Choi nods slowly. One night you came to me, asked if I knew any good lawyers in Seoul, said you needed to untangle yourself from family obligations. You looked scared but determined, like someone preparing to jump from a high place trusting they'd land safely. Ji-sung closes his eyes, trying to push past the fog. Nothing, just fragments, the sensation of fear, of resolution, of standing at a crossroads knowing there's no turning back. The night they came, Mrs. Choi's voice turned somber. I was in the kitchen. I heard shouting from your room, a woman's voice, sharp and commanding, a man's voice, cold and measured, and your voice, angry but controlled, saying you wouldn't go back, that you'd found something worth more than money or reputation. Her hands tremble slightly as she turns the album page to a blank space where a photo has been removed. I heard furniture scraping, struggle, then a terrible crash and silence. When I ran upstairs, your door was open. There was blood on the floor near the stairs. The people with you, 3 of them, were carrying you out. You were unconscious. One of them, the older woman, she stopped me with just a look. Then the man, the tall one with cold eyes, he handed me an envelope. Money, Ji-sung says flatly. Yes, and a card with a phone number. He said if anyone came asking about you, I was to call that number and forget you existed. He said it very calmly, like commenting on the weather. But his eyes promised consequences if I didn't comply. Did anyone come asking? Amara's voice is tight. Mrs. Choi looks at her with deep sadness. You did. 2 days later. You were frantic, showing his picture to everyone on the street. You came here asking if I'd seen him. I lied to your face. Told you no one by that name had stayed here. The look in your eyes when I said it. She shakes her head. I've regretted that lie every day since. Amara's composure cracks. Tears slide down her cheeks silently. Ji-sung pulls her close, feeling her pain as acutely as his own. Why tell us now? Ji-sung asks. Because you came back, Mrs. Choi says simply. Because some lies deserve to be corrected before death makes correction impossible. I'm 76 years old. I don't fear wealthy families anymore. She stands, disappearing again into the back room. When she returns, she's carrying a shoebox bound with string. After they took you, I cleaned your room. Found these hidden under the mattress. I think you hid them deliberately, maybe sensing something was wrong. She opens the box, revealing its contents. Papers covered in Ji-sung's handwriting, printed emails, photographs, and a small velvet box. Ji-sung reaches for the papers with shaking hands. The handwriting is definitely his, but the words feel foreign. Plan. Tell family this week. End engagement formally. Job offer in Jongup. Smaller firm. Honest work. Enough to start over. Amara agrees. Apartment viewing Saturday. Ring purchased. Ask her properly this time. Not just promises whispered in darkness. Build something real. Build something mine. The words swim before his eyes. This was his plan. His choice. His life that was stolen. Amara picks up the velvet box with trembling fingers. Inside sits a simple silver ring with a small diamond. Modest, but chosen with care. Her sob is audible, breaking the heavy silence. You were going to propose, she whispers. I was building a future, Ji-sung corrects, his voice rough with emotion. We were building a future, and they took it. Mrs. Choi gently pushes the box toward them. These are yours. They always were. I was just keeping them safe. Ji-sung's phone suddenly vibrates, loud in the quiet room. Both he and Amara flinch, grabbing for their devices simultaneously. But it's not the hospital. It's a text from an unknown number. Stop digging. Some truths protect everyone involved. Continue and you'll discover why certain things were buried. The message is followed by a photograph. Hana in her hospital bed, taken from outside her window. Recent, maybe within the last hour. Amara's face goes white. They're threatening our daughter. Ji-sung's hands curl into fists, rage burning through him with an intensity that momentarily clears the fog in his mind. For just a second, he remembers something. Not visual, not clear, but emotional. This feeling. He's felt this specific combination of fear and fury before. 6 years ago, when his family first came to take him back. When he realized they would do whatever necessary to maintain their control. We need to go, he says, standing abruptly. Now. They thank Mrs. Choi quickly, taking the shoebox with them. As they rush to the car, Ji-sung makes a decision. He's done being passive, done letting his family dictate reality, done letting fear keep him from protecting what matters. He dials a number he hasn't called in years. A college friend who became an investigative journalist. Someone who built a career exposing the secrets wealthy families prefer to keep buried. Minho, Ji-sung says when the call connects. I need your help. And I need you to publish everything you find, regardless of who it destroys. As they speed back toward Jongseon, toward Hana, Jisung catches Amara's eye. No more running. No more silence. Whatever the cost, we're ending this. She nods, her jaw set with determination that matches his own. Behind them, neither notices the same car from earlier, maintaining its careful distance. The hunt is no longer about prevention. Now it's about containment. And containment, the driver knows, sometimes requires more permanent solutions. The truth is emerging, but truth has teeth. And the Beck family is about to learn that some secrets, once exposed, consume everything they touch. The hospital room feels different when fear lives in it. Hana sleeps peacefully, unaware of the photograph taken through her window, unaware of the threats circling her like sharks sensing blood and water. Jisung stands guard by the door, his body positioned between his daughter and whatever danger might come. He hasn't slept in 36 hours. He won't sleep until this is resolved. Amara sits beside Hana's bed, one hand wrapped around their daughter's small fingers, the other clutching her phone. Every notification makes her flinch. Every footstep in the hallway outside tenses her shoulders. They've requested hospital security to monitor the room, but both of them know that money can buy access anywhere. The Beck family has proven that already. We should move her, Amara says for the third time in an hour. Her voice is hoarse from exhaustion and suppressed tears. To another hospital, another city, somewhere they can't find her. She's too fragile to move, Jisung reminds her gently, though the same desperate thought has crossed his mind dozens of times. Dr. Kang said the treatment she's receiving is time-sensitive. Disrupting it now could... He doesn't finish. They both know what disrupting treatment could mean. His phone rings, and Jisung answers before the first ring finishes. Minho? I've been digging. His friend's voice comes through, urgent and energized in the way journalists get when they smell a real story. Jisung, what you've told me, if even half of it is verifiable, this is bigger than family drama. This is criminal conspiracy. Tell me something I don't know. I spoke to 3 former Beck Industries employees who left under suspicious circumstances around the same time you had your accident. And all 3 signed NDAs with substantial financial incentives for silence. All 3 are now willing to talk off the record. Jisung's pulse quickens. What did they say? That your family has a history of making problems disappear. A whistleblower who discovered accounting irregularities, suddenly transferred to a remote position, and eventually quit. A business partner who threatened to expose bid rigging. His company mysteriously went bankrupt shortly after. And 6 years ago, a son who was about to embarrass the family by breaking an important engagement was neutralized. Jisung finishes, the word tasting like poison in his mouth. One of my sources was the driver that night. He's the one who carried you out of the guest house. He said you were bleeding from a head wound, unconscious, barely breathing. He thought you were gone. Your brother kept saying, fix this, over and over like a mantra. Jisung's hand tightens around the phone. Juno panicked. More than that, he made choices. They all did. The driver said they took you to a private facility, not a real hospital. A place where doctors ask fewer questions when wealthy families need discretion. You were kept there for 2 weeks before being transferred to a legitimate hospital with a fabricated story about your injuries. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of Amara searching for him while he lay unconscious in some medical facility that existed to serve the rich and hide their mistakes. 2 weeks of his family constructing the narrative they'd maintained for 6 years. There's more, Minho continues. I found the doctor who treated you initially. Took some convincing, but he admitted your injuries were consistent with significant trauma. Not a simple fall, but impact suggesting you'd been pushed or struck. He documented it all, then was paid a substantial sum to revise his medical opinion. Jisung feels cold spreading through his chest. So it wasn't an accident. The fall might have been, but what led to it? That was deliberate. Your family came to that guest house intending to take you back by force if necessary. Things escalated. You fought them. Someone pushed you, or you were shoved during the struggle, and you fell down those stairs. Instead of calling emergency services, instead of facing consequences, they made it disappear. Through the phone, Jisung can hear Minho typing rapidly. I'm writing this story, Jisung, with or without your blessing. This is the kind of thing people need to know. How much power lets families literally rewrite reality to avoid accountability. Write it, Jisung says without hesitation. But give me 48 hours before you publish. I need to confront them one more time. Get the full truth on record. And I need to make sure Hana is protected before this becomes public. After hanging up, Jisung finds Amara watching him with eyes that have seen too much in too short a time. "It's worse than we thought," she says. Not a question. "Yes." She looks down at Hana, brushing hair back from their daughter's forehead with infinite gentleness. "I keep thinking about that night. How I woke up and you were gone. How I searched for you, calling your name like you might hear me and come back. I walked every street in Jeongeuk for weeks. I showed your picture to everyone. And you were there, somewhere, unable to answer because they'd made sure you couldn't." Her voice breaks. "We lost 6 years because your family decided they knew better, because reputation and money mattered more than love, more than truth, more than you." Jisung crosses to her, kneeling beside the hospital bed so he can look up into her face. "I can't give those years back. Can't undo the loneliness or the fear or the nights you spent raising our daughter alone wondering why I abandoned you. But I can make sure they can't take anything else from us. Not one more day. Not one more moment." A knock at the door makes them both jump. Jisung rises, positioning himself protectively as the door opens to reveal Juno. His brother looks terrible. Rumpled suit, dark circles under bloodshot eyes, the posture of someone carrying weight they can no longer bear. "Don't," Juno says, raising his hands as Jisung advances. "I'm not here to threaten. I'm here to confess. Get out. Please." The word sounds foreign coming from Juno, who spent his life commanding rather than requesting. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Then you never have to see me again." Amara stands, her voice ice. "You sent that photo. You threatened our daughter." "No." Juno's denial is immediate and desperate. "That wasn't me. I swear on everything I am, I would never threaten a child, but I know who did." Something in his voice makes Jisung pause. "Explain." Juno steps into the room, carefully keeping distance between himself and them. "There are aspects of our family business that I've kept from you. Deliberately. Partnerships with people who don't resolve conflicts through lawyers and contracts. People who view problems as things to be eliminated rather than negotiated. You're involved with organized networks," Amara says flatly. Juno flinches at the direct statement. "Our father made those alliances 20 years ago. I inherited them along with everything else. And when you started digging, when you went to that guest house and started asking questions, it triggered alerts. These people, they don't like attention. They especially don't like investigative journalists suddenly interested in family history. So they threatened my daughter to keep me quiet." Jisung's voice could cut glass. "They threatened her to control me," Juno corrects. "To remind me that if this story breaks, if investigators start looking too closely at Baek Industries, they all go down too. And they won't go down alone." He pulls out his phone, showing them a message thread that makes Jisung's blood run cold. Photos of Hana, photos of Amara, photos of Jisung himself, timestamps showing constant surveillance over the past 2 days, and messages making clear what will happen if exposure continues. "They want me to make you stop," Juno says quietly, "to convince you that going public will endanger everyone you love. They have resources I can't match, and absolutely no moral boundaries. And you came here to deliver their message." Amara's voice drips contempt. "I came here to help you disappear." Juno's words fall like stones into still water. "I have accounts they don't know about. Resources I've kept separate. I can get you and Hana out of Korea tonight. New identities. Enough money to start over somewhere they'll never find you. Australia, maybe. Canada. Somewhere far from all of this. Running." Jisung's laugh is bitter. "You want us to run? I want you to survive." Juno's composure cracks. "I've spent 6 years living with what I did to you. What we all did. I won't spend the rest of my life knowing I could have saved you and your daughter, but chose family reputation instead. Not again. Never again." The silence that follows is heavy with impossible choices. Safety through exile. Truth at the cost of danger. Freedom purchased with permanent separation from everything familiar. Hana stirs in her sleep, making a small sound that draws all their attention. In that moment, seeing their daughter's small chest rise and fall with each precious breath, both Jisung and Amara understand that some decisions aren't really choices at all. "We run," Amara says quietly, "but not forever. Just until Hana is strong enough to travel safely. Then we fight from somewhere they can't reach her." Jisung looks at his brother, seeing genuine remorse in eyes that have calculated and manipulated for so long. "Why help us now? What's changed?" Juno's expression crumbles. Because I saw you with her. Saw the way you looked at your daughter. And I realized I've spent 35 years building an empire on top of broken relationships and buried truths. What's it worth? All this power, all this money, if I can't even protect the people I'm supposed to love? He moves toward the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. I'll make arrangements. Be ready to leave tomorrow night. And Jisung? He turns back, tears finally breaking free. I'm sorry doesn't cover it. Nothing covers it. But I am. For all of it. After he leaves, Jisung and Amara hold each other beside their daughter's bed, making plans they never imagined needing. Outside, the sun sets over Jongseon, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. Tomorrow they'll run. Eventually they'll fight. But tonight, they're still here. Still together. Still refusing to let fear steal what family has already tried to take. The medical transport van idles in the hospital's rear loading area, its engine a low purr in the pre-dawn darkness. Dr. Kang personally oversees Hana's transfer onto the specialized gurney, his movements efficient, but gentle as he adjusts the portable monitoring equipment. He's asked no questions about why they're moving her in the middle of the night to a smaller facility in Jiangsu. Some doctors learn early that wealthy families have their reasons, and survival means respecting the boundaries of what you're allowed to know. Amara climbs into the back of the van with Hana, refusing to be separated from her daughter even for the 2-hour drive. Her hand never leaves Hana's, fingers intertwined as if physical connection alone could protect them from what's coming. She's packed their lives into 2 suitcases, 6 years of memories condensed into clothes and photographs, and a few toys that Hana loves most. Everything else they're leaving behind like shed skin. Jisung does one final check of the perimeter, his eyes scanning shadows for threats that could be anywhere or nowhere. Paranoia has become practical. Fear has become wisdom. Trust has become a luxury they can no longer afford. Juno appears from the darkness like a ghost, making both Jisung and Amara flinch. He's dressed simply. Jeans, dark jacket, none of his usual expensive suits. In his hands, he carries a leather messenger bag that he passes to Jisung with careful solemnity. Everything you need, Juno says quietly. Documents, cash, account access codes. The facility in Jiangsu is small but well-equipped. I've arranged for private security. People loyal to me personally, not the family. They'll keep watch while Hana completes her treatment. Jisung takes the bag, its weight substantial. And after? When she's stable? Passports arrive in 3 days. Australian, under new names. I have contacts in Sydney who can help you establish yourselves. Jobs, housing, school enrollment for Hana when she's ready. Juno's voice catches on their daughter's name. I'll never meet her, will I? My niece. I'll never get to know her. No, Amara says from inside the van, her voice hard as diamond. You won't. That's the price of the choices you made 6 years ago. Juno nods, accepting this judgment without protest. Fair. More than fair. He turns to Jisung. Our mother doesn't know I'm helping you. She still believes reputation matters more than reality. When this story breaks, and it will break, your journalist friend won't wait forever. She'll blame me for everything. I'm prepared for that. What about the others? Jisung asks. The people with no moral boundaries? Something dark crosses Juno's face. I'm handling that. Let me worry about containing the threats. You focus on keeping your family safe. The words hang between them. Your family. A deliberate distinction that separates Jisung and Amara and Hana from the Bayek legacy. It's both liberation and loss. Freedom purchased with permanent exile from blood and history. There's something else, Juno says, reaching into his jacket. He pulls out a small envelope, worn at the edges as if handled many times. I found this in your room at the estate, hidden behind a loose panel in your desk. You must have put it there before leaving for Jongeup, some kind of insurance maybe. Jisung opens the envelope with trembling hands. Inside is a letter, written in his own handwriting, dated 1 week before his disappearance. If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I'm leaving tomorrow for Jongeup, but I have a feeling the family knows more than they're saying about my plans with Amara. Juno has been asking too many questions. Mother has been too quiet. I'm writing this as evidence in case I need to prove later that I made these choices willingly, of sound mind, with full awareness of consequences. I, Baek Jisung, formally declare my intention to end my engagement to Min Sora and to resign from all positions at Baek Industries. I'm choosing a life with Amara Lee, regardless of family objection. If anything happens to prevent this choice, Investigate thoroughly. The Bayek family has a history of making inconvenient problems disappear. Don't let me become another one. The letter is notarized, dated, signed with witnesses. Legal proof of intent that would stand up in court. Proof that what happened wasn't an accident, wasn't confusion, but deliberate interference with documented free will. You knew, Jisung says, looking up at his brother. Even then, some part of me knew you might try to stop me. And I did. Juno's voice breaks completely. I stopped you. And in doing so, I destroyed 6 years of your life. 6 years you could have spent with her, with your daughter. 6 years of happiness I stole because I was too afraid of disappointing a dead father and an unbending mother. Tears streamed down his face, illuminated by the van's interior lights. I thought I was protecting the family, preserving our legacy. But what legacy? Built on lies and coercion and blood on guesthouse stairs? What are we protecting if not each other? If not love? If not truth? Dr. Kang clears his throat diplomatically. We need to leave. The roads will be clearer before sunrise. Jisung nods. But before climbing into the van, he does something that surprises everyone, including himself. He pulls Juno into a brief, fierce embrace. I don't forgive you, Jisung says quietly into his brother's ear. Maybe I never will, but I understand that you're trying to make it right. That has to count for something. When they separate, Juno's face is wet with tears. Take care of them. Be the father I'll never get to be an uncle to. Build the life I helped destroy. And Jisung, he grips his brother's shoulders. Be happy, despite everything. Refuse to let our family's poison touch your chance at happiness. The van pulls away slowly, navigating the narrow hospital driveway toward the main road. Jisung watches through the rear window as Juno becomes smaller, a solitary figure standing in the darkness, one hand raised in farewell or benediction or apology, maybe all three at once. Inside the van, Hana sleeps peacefully, unaware that her entire world is shifting beneath her. The monitors beep their steady rhythm, testament to life continuing despite chaos. Amara leans her head against Jisung's shoulder, exhaustion finally claiming her as adrenaline fades. Do you think we're doing the right thing? She whispers. Running? I think we're doing the necessary thing, Jisung answers. Right and necessary aren't always the same, but they're both valid. The drive to Jiangsu takes them through mountain roads as dawn begins to paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. The world wakes up around them. Farmers heading to fields, delivery trucks starting their routes, the ordinary rhythms of ordinary lives continuing regardless of one family's extraordinary crisis. Jisung thinks about the letter he wrote 6 years ago, about the version of himself who knew danger was coming, but chose love anyway. That man was braver than he feels now, or maybe just more naive. But that man also made a choice that still echoes through time, the choice to risk everything for something real. They arrive at the facility as full morning breaks over the mountains. It's small, as Juno promised. More clinic than hospital, but modern and clean. 2 men in plain clothes wait outside, their postures professional, their eyes constantly scanning. Juno's private security, vetted and loyal to something other than Bayek family money. Dr. Kang helps transfer Hana inside, where a small team of medical staff waits. They work with quiet efficiency, setting up the room with equipment transferred from the larger hospital, making the space as comfortable as possible for a 5-year-old who'll spend the next several weeks here. Amara immediately begins personalizing the room. Photos on the windowsill, Hana's favorite stuffed rabbit positioned on the pillow, a small speaker playing the gentle music Hana loves falling asleep to, creating home in a temporary space, building safety through familiar rituals. Jisung steps outside, needing air, needing space to process everything that's happened in the past 72 hours. His phone buzzes. A message from Minho. Story goes live in 12 hours. Tried to give you more time, but my editor is pushing. I'm sorry. Are you safe? 12 hours. In 12 hours, the carefully constructed lies of the Bayek family will be exposed to public scrutiny. In 12 hours, his mother will know betrayal. The family business will face investigation, and everyone connected to them will scramble to distance themselves from the scandal. In 12 hours, there's no going back. Jisung types a response. We're safe. Publish it. Let the truth do what it will. He thinks about his father, dead 5 years now, who built an empire on secrecy and shame. He thinks about his mother, who values appearance over substance. He thinks about Juno, learning too late that some prices are too high to pay for reputation. And he thinks about Hana, sleeping in a clinic room surrounded by medical equipment, fighting her own battle with courage she doesn't even know she possesses. His daughter, his reason for risking everything. The sun climbs higher, burning away the morning mist. In the distance, Ji-sung can see the small town of Jiangsu coming to life. Shops opening, people walking to work, children heading to school, normal life continuing its normal rhythms. Soon, their lives won't be normal anymore. Soon, the Beck family name will be synonymous with scandal instead of success. Soon, everyone will know what they did. But Hana will be alive. That's all that matters. Everything else, reputation, legacy, the opinions of people who value appearance over truth, can burn. Let it all burn. Ji-sung goes back inside to his daughter, to his family, the real one, the one worth fighting for. The truth is about to exact its price from everyone involved. But some prices, Ji-sung has learned, are worth paying. 3 months later, the small house in Jiangsu has transformed from temporary refuge into something resembling home. It sits at the end of a quiet street, where cherry trees will bloom in spring, their branches now bare but promising. The house itself is modest. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that smells of Amara's attempts to master Korean cooking, a living room where Hana's drawings cover the walls like colorful prayers. Hana stands at the window, her nose pressed against the glass, watching snow fall in fat, lazy flakes. She's gained weight since they arrived, her cheeks fuller, her eyes brighter. The treatments worked. Her body accepted what Ji-sung's bone marrow offered, cells recognizing cells, biology accomplishing what intention alone never could. She still tires easily, still visits the clinic twice a week for monitoring, but Dr. Kang speaks of recovery with cautious optimism that sounds increasingly like certainty. Appa, Hana calls, using the Korean word for father that came naturally once she understood who Ji-sung was. The snow is like tiny stars falling down. Ji-sung joins her at the window, crouching so they're at the same height. At 5 years old, Hana has opinions about everything. Which books are best, why purple is superior to all other colors, how clouds are really just sky sheep that forgot how to baa. She talks constantly, filling spaces that were silent too long, with observations and questions, and the peculiar logic of children who see the world without adult cynicism. You're right, Ji-sung says, studying the snow with mock seriousness, though I think they're more like rice grains from heaven's kitchen. Hana giggles, the sound still capable of stopping Ji-sung's heart with its pure joy. That's silly, Appa. Heaven doesn't need kitchens. How do you know? Have you been there? No, but if I go, I'll check and tell you. She says it with such casual certainty that Ji-sung has to swallow past the sudden tightness in his throat. Children talk about death without fear, because they don't yet understand its permanence. Hana came close enough to touch its edges, but she doesn't remember those frightening weeks. Her illness exists for her only as the reason she met her father, the strange gift wrapped in medical terminology and hospital stays. Amara appears in the doorway, flour dusting her hands and a streak of it somehow in her hair. Dinner in 20 minutes. I'm attempting japchae. It might be edible. Everything you make is edible, Ji-sung says, standing to kiss her flour-dusted nose. You're a terrible liar, but I love you for trying. The words, I love you, still feel new between them, hesitant like speaking a language you're just learning. They've had to rebuild their relationship from fragments and lost time, starting with who they are now, rather than who they were 6 years ago. Some days it feels natural. Other days they're strangers navigating shared space with careful politeness. But they're trying. That counts for something. Ji-sung's phone buzzes on the kitchen counter. He glances at the screen. A news alert. The trial has concluded. Park Mi-young and 2 former Bayek Industries executives have been found guilty of conspiracy, evidence tampering, and intimidation. The sentences are substantial, though not devastating. 3 years for his mother, 5 for the executives, all eligible for parole with good behavior. The organized network members his family partnered with received harsher judgments, though several fled prosecution through connections that money and influence maintain even under scrutiny. Beck Industries itself has been dissolved, its assets liquidated to pay fines and settlements. The family name, once synonymous with construction and development across Korea, now serves as cautionary tale about unchecked power and moral bankruptcy. The house in Namwon, the traditional estate where Ji-sung grew up, is being sold to pay legal fees. Everything his father built, gone. Everything his mother protected, scattered. Everything his family valued, proven worthless in the face of truth's accounting. Ji-sung feels nothing. No satisfaction in their downfall. No grief for lost legacy. Just the quiet recognition that some cycles need breaking, even when the breaking destroys everything you thought defined you. Is it about the trial? Amara asks quietly, reading his expression. Sentencing came through. Mother got 3 years. Amara nods slowly. How do you feel? Relieved it's over. Sorry it had to happen. Grateful we're here instead of there. He looks at Hana, still watching snow fall with absorbed fascination. Mostly grateful. A knock at the door interrupts them. Ji-sung tenses instinctively. 3 months hasn't erased the habit of seeing threats everywhere. But it's just their neighbor, Mrs. Han, holding a covered dish that steams in the cold air. Kimchi jjigae, she announces cheerfully. I made too much, and my husband is away visiting his mother. You'd be doing me a favor taking some. This has become ritual. Mrs. Han accidentally making too much food several times a week. Their other neighbors finding excuses to stop by with offerings of banchan, or freshly baked bread, or children's books their own kids have outgrown. The community has absorbed them without questions, accepting the vague story about Ji-sung's business relocation and Hana's medical needs. Small towns operate on different social contracts than cities. Privacy is respected, but isolation is prevented. They've been adopted whether they intended it or not. After Mrs. Han leaves, Amara sets the table while Ji-sung helps Hana wash her hands. They sit together, the 3 of them, steam rising from bowls of stew and rice. It's simple, ordinary. Everything the past 6 years weren't. Appa, Hana says between bites. Will we stay here forever? Ji-sung and Amara exchange glances. The Australian passports sit in a locked drawer, still unused. They've built something here. Not the life they planned 6 years ago, but a life nonetheless. Leaving feels both necessary and impossible. Would you like to stay? Ji-sung asks, instead of answering. Hana considers this with the seriousness she applies to all important questions. I like my room. And Mrs. Han's kimchi. And the way snow falls here. She pauses. But I think I'd like anywhere if we're all together. The wisdom of children, Ji-sung thinks. The uncomplicated truth that adults forget in pursuit of perfect circumstances. Home isn't location. It's presence. It's people choosing each other despite easier options existing. Then we'll stay, Amara decides. At least for now. We can always leave later if we need to. After dinner, Ji-sung reads to Hana from a picture book about a tiger who befriends a magpie. Hana falls asleep before the story ends, her breathing deep and even, one hand curled around her stuffed rabbit. Ji-sung watches her sleep for long minutes, memorizing details he missed during her first 5 years. The way her eyelashes cast shadows on her cheeks, the small scar on her chin from falling off a swing last month, the absolute trust in her expression, the certainty that she's safe because the adults around her have promised she is. In the living room, Amara sits on the couch with her laptop, editing photographs for the freelance work that pays their bills now. She's good at it, capturing moments with an artist's eye that sees beauty in ordinary things. A child's hand reaching for soap bubbles, an elderly couple sharing a bench, light through winter branches creating shadow patterns on snow. Ji-sung sits beside her, and she leans into him automatically, their bodies fitting together like pieces that were always meant to connect. Do you miss it? She asks quietly. Your old life? No. The answer is immediate and honest. I miss the version of myself who chose you the first time. I wish I could remember being that brave. But the life itself? The expectations and obligations and performance of being a Beck? He shakes his head. I don't miss any of it. Even your family? That's harder. I miss who they could have been if they'd chosen differently. But who they actually are. The people who valued reputation over everything? No, I don't miss them. Amara closes her laptop, turning to face him fully. Juno called me yesterday. I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure how you'd react. Ji-sung's shoulders tense. What did he want? To know if we're okay. To tell me he's starting a small architecture firm, trying to build something honest with what's left of his portion of the family assets. He's seeing a therapist, learning to live with what he did. She pauses. He asked if Hana would be willing to meet him someday. He said he understands if the answer is no, but he wanted me to know the door is open on his side. What do you think? I think, Amara says slowly, that people are more complicated than the worst things they've done. I think Juno destroyed 6 years of our lives, but he also saved Hana's life by helping us escape when danger was real. I think refusing to forgive is valid, but so is choosing to forgive. I think we get to decide what kind of story this becomes. Ji-sung pulls her close, breathing in the jasmine scent of her hair. I'm not ready to see him yet. Maybe never. But I won't stop you or Hana from making that choice when she's old enough to understand what it means. Outside, snow continues falling, covering the world in white that makes everything look clean and new. Somewhere in Seoul, his mother sits in a prison cell learning what powerlessness feels like. Somewhere in the city, Juno tries to build a life with hands stained by old choices. Somewhere, the story Minho published continues circulating, teaching other families that some secrets cost more than their keeping is worth. But here, in this small house in Jiangsu, 3 people build ordinary happiness from extraordinary wreckage. They eat dinner together, read bedtime stories, watch snowfall like tiny stars, choose each other daily despite pasts that tried to keep them apart. This is the truth that survived all the lies. Love, when protected fiercely enough, can outlast even deliberate destruction. Family, when chosen rather than inherited, becomes unbreakable. And sometimes the smallest lives, like a 5-year-old girl who almost died, teach the biggest lessons about what actually matters. We're going to be okay, Amara whispers into the quiet. We already are, Ji-sung answers. And outside, the snow keeps falling, gentle and persistent, covering old footprints, making space for new paths to be walked. Sometimes a single phone call can unravel years of silence, revealing not just the truth we feared, but the truth we needed to face. As Amara and Ji-sung learned, the past does not ask for permission to return. It simply arrives, carrying unfinished chapters and unanswered questions. And in the quiet spaces between those questions, we discover who we really are. What would you have done if the future of your child depended on reaching out to the one person who broke you? Would you have had the courage to try? When Ji-sung looked into Hana's eyes and felt a bond he could not remember but somehow recognized, he stood at a crossroads where many of us would hesitate. If you had lost pieces of your own story, would you be brave enough to reclaim them, even knowing that truth can cost more than silence? Or would you choose the safety of not knowing, protecting yourself from the weight that comes with clarity? In the end, this story reminds us that love is often born in the spaces where fear once lived, and that healing rarely follows a straight line. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from choosing to walk forward, even when the ground beneath us still trembles. And perhaps the most important question of all is the one we ask ourselves now. If life handed you a truth capable of reshaping everything, would you run from it, or finally face it?